Welcome, ladies and gents, and everyone in between, to episode, I do believe now, 8 of the Authenticity Hour. I'm surprised it's made it this long with what we've said on the show so far, so go back and watch the previous episodes if you're interested. But it is my pleasure to be joined by a very special guest today. She was a driving force on how kind of we exist today, actually, and really influenced me in my uni years as a teacher that came in with some real agency experience and helped guide us when we were all there. So she's a lecturer, MA, MIPA, IPA, Woman of Tomorrow. So many things I'm trying to read off of LinkedIn. So many accomplishments here, there and everywhere. Kathryn Ellis joining us from Mcann, Bristol. Welcome. Thank you for making the time.
Hello, lovely to see you. Lovely to speak to you again.
Yeah, it's really good to catch up in such a weird, odd manner. It's probably not the manner you catch up with previous students often, but sometimes
I get to write them a reference. That's quite nice.
See, there's levels to this game, Kathryn, and we're just up there. But yeah, it's really good to see you. And as I said, like, you were at uni, I think, like, I probably should have given uni a little bit more credit. There was things that Solon did very well, things that could have improved on, but one of the things was actually bringing in people with real life experience. And you were there. Were you doing your masters while you were there lecturing?
I might have been for some of it. I think I can't remember what year I did my masters. Yeah, I probably was. Yeah, probably was. So I had a bit more time for your year than when I'm in my proper day job. So I took 3 months off to finish the masters, I think, and I was teaching. So, but normally I'm kind of full-time working at Mcann. So yeah.
Excellent, I love that. And a weird fun fact is, in one of the units we had with you, which is account management and planning, one of which was to essentially create your own agency and create the whole pitch deck for it. And the idea for Shogun essentially started all the way back there in that first unit. So some of the initial ideas still pull through today. So things like 4-day work weeks, things like kind of flexible working and adding in freelance elements. And then one of the future thing I put in there was, like, I wanted to do an account management app, so everything could be seen through there, which, don't worry, it's in the works somewhere or another. But yeah, so some of those initial ideas were born from that class. So it's very good to bring you on and kind of just tell you that, because I was like, I've never actually mentioned it before. So yeah, that was a cool little unit, and I'm glad we did it, because that was very, very fun. But I suppose instead of me waffling, I shall let you introduce yourself to everyone. Feel free to drop any references and drop any flexes as much as possible, because we want people to know how amazing you are.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of letters after my name from what you've just read out.
I know, it was very hard to read.
I'm kind of strange, I'm kind of hybrid. Most of the time, I'm managing partner at Mcann in Bristol. I'm a strategist by trade. I've always been a strategist, which is weird. So I've never worked in anything else in advertising. I've never been an account manager, never been a creative. Don't particularly want to be either of those things.
It's a tough job.
Yeah. So I've been a strategist now for about 16 years, I think. I graduated in 2004, so I think I'm getting on 17 years. And worked at various agencies from Dare when it still exists, doesn't it? And Delaney Lund, which is now Mullen Lowe, and a bit of EBWA, Karma Armour, all different places. And then ended up at Mcann when I moved to Bristol about 6 or 7 years ago.
Amazing.
And during that time, actually longer than I've been at Mcann, I've been an associate lecturer at Southampton Solent University. So that was inspired by my boss at Karma Armour, Sid, who's now Wonderman Thompson. And he kind of wanted us to do something interesting. And the most interesting thing I could find that I would do was teach. Other people started up kind of Bermuda shorts businesses, or, you know, record shops or coffee shops, and I taught. So that's how boring I am.
It was an essential practice, I might add.
And then I'm also an academic as well. So my MA started off really quite an interesting strand of stuff that I never really have time for, and research into gender in our industry, and specifically in creative departments. So I followed up that research last year and published an article with Advertising and Society Quarterly. We're renewing my research and talking to lots of really, really interesting women from creative departments at all different levels to see what the disjoint was, why we were losing so many women between creative education and creative departments. So that's been really interesting. And I've worked with quite a few organisations like Creative Equals and She Says with that. I'd love to do more of that, but obviously I am holding down 2 jobs at the same time. And I had a baby, not last summer, but not last Christmas, but Christmas before. So I did my journalistic while I was actually on maternity leave. So it's all a bit busy.
You don't make it easy on yourself, do you? You've got all the plates spinning that could possibly be, but that's amazing. That is really, really cool. And we'll get into the stuff about gender in the creatives, which I definitely want to dive into because that's extremely important, and actually something I was talking to my other half about the other day, weirdly. But we'll get onto that later. But one of the things I wanted to ask you first is kind of the differences between advertising and marketing recently. So like we're like from very different spheres. I was taught from a traditional advertising point of view, and that structure, which is essentially kind of accounts departments, planning departments, creative departments, and then you'll have a separate media agency that will do all of the distribution, and that's kind of how the big leagues work in a way. But with the kind of hybrid agencies popping up here, there, and everywhere, with people saying they are completely full service and offering everything under the sun. Have you noticed a difference in how people respond, how many different companies come to you with different experiences? And have you had to shift your ways of strategizing and planning based on how these agencies have done and changed the sphere?
Yeah. Yes. That, well, I mean, if you look back into history, in the 60s, all advertising agencies were full service, and then they kind of broke out into splitting media and creative. And I suppose it's just kind of come full circle, but because there's a lot of blurry lines, so something like social search, influencers, that kind of thing, that's where blurred lines start to merge between creative, and it's not as paid for media as such. So, you get agencies on both ends kind of advising on those elements, and it's a bit of a land grab. I do think, I think it's going more solely actually in London. In a funny way, since moving to Bristol, my skill set has become more diverse because we get clients of a certain size who want to take both media and creative and social and PR from the same agency because they actually get better value for money, and their budgets don't kind of warrant separate agencies. So in Bristol, we are actually a full service agency. We have Universal Mcann kind of built into our office, whereas that isn't the case in London. But I do think that, and that's a factor of our clients that we get, because really for a lot of them, we're an outsourced marketing department. They might not have very large marketing departments, they might not have a lot of tools, etc. But I think that is a growing trend actually anyway. So clients are requiring more things of strategists, like comms planning, channel planning, kind of channel neutral planning, I suppose you would say, across social and media, and actually further up the chain stuff. So a lot of the work that I do is helping clients set budget and divide that between different platforms, spaces, wherever, to get the best kind of use of their spend. And I think that's more what's happening with strategists now. Strategists are kind of at the sharp end of this. So from our Mcann World Group tools, we've added in a lot of consultants to our department. So kind of McKinsey style marketing consultants and business consultants. And also we have added lots of communications planning tools, because we're kind of doing a bit of the media job, and sometimes there isn't paid media. That's the more kind of common occurrence, is actually there isn't paid media and you're dealing with a shopper agency or a social agency, or you're kind of doing list buying or something. So the strategist at the creative agency needs to do the comms planning because there is no media agency.
I mean, I've seen it from both ends, from both client side, agency side, on a large scale and smaller scale, and now starting this. Obviously, we're one of them, but the rise of specialist agencies has been very interesting amongst that, and I think this is why planning, I don't know why, but planning gets overlooked by a lot of clients, and I look at them and go, you seriously need to divvy whatever this is up intelligently, especially with the shift in so many different social platforms. Someone's dedicated job needs to be understanding how these things work and fit in, especially with how much TikTok has changed the social sphere, and that pulling through that authenticity and almost getting rid of the whole Instagram perfect style of content. It's definitely changed a lot. So having someone to understand that is probably the most vital thing I can think of. Has TikTok changed the way you guys are planning on the social side of things? Because I know it influences us a lot every single day, but on the scale of brands you work with, has it come into the frame too much yet?
They're definitely using it. I suppose it's a factor of my role is I don't get down the dirty end a lot. It's a horrible thing to say, but I'm kind of like saying, you know, you probably should spend this in this social, and you know, and a specialist would kind of deal with it. But we're definitely using them. I mean, mainly through influencers. So kind of the recruitment of influencers through specialist agencies to create content on TikTok around kind of specialist interests. Mainly, that we've started using them for alcohol brands that we work with, but also pet food brands as well, because you know, pets are a massive thing in social media. And I was speaking to our research department the other day, because we do increasingly clients asking for these things which are online communities, but they're not in the truest research sense. A lot of them are kind of a group of advocates as well, and the requirements for that often to audition is to recruit through TikTok content, etc. And car brands seem to be really loving this type of stuff. So people will talk about pets, cars, and what they get up to on a night out, and they are great areas in which to use TikTok.
Yeah, I just love how like everyone on TikTok is way too comfortable, like just from someone that uses it every day. But that's a massive advantage for brands as well. It's a place where people can be more honest. And I think some brands will miss out on it if they keep the same mentality they had before in terms of just going, here's what we sell, buy this. And this TikTok's whole thing is don't make ads, make TikToks. And that statement rolls true through pretty much everything. And yeah, it all lies in the creative. I mean, one of the reasons that Shogun exists is purely to go, we want to give you back your organic autonomy to make sure you're focusing on these channels, because they should be one of your main things here. This is your direct line to your audience. This is where they see you in the trenches every day posting, and if that's meaningful, if that offers value, if it entertains, inspires or educates, that in itself changes you, and you can lean into your authenticity instead of just being another brand that goes, hey, you buy my stuff, because nobody wants that. But again, that's kind of just taking the very basic principles and shifting them to different platforms. So yeah, I find that very interesting, and I think it forms into how creative is moving, because a lot of creative obviously comes from influencers and things like that. But have you seen anything about how creative agencies and creative departments are changing recently in terms of anything that's happened post-lockdown, post-COVID? Is there a different way of operation, especially kind of because the best creative sessions happen when everyone's in a room scribbling on whiteboards, coming up with great stuff? But while that wasn't an option, have you seen a shift in how they work?
It's been very interesting, actually. And I'm part of the APG strategy leaders group. So it's almost like a therapy session that happens every few months for people, heads of planning around the industry. And what surprised us all is actually how our creative departments don't want to go back into the office. We thought they'd be the first departments kind of rushing back in because they were missing out on all that collaboration and da-da-da. But actually, if you notice creatives' behaviour around an office, they always take themselves away anyway. So they're always the ones that are found sat in like an office in a corner or a booth or in the pub opposite, because they actually want kind of quiet time to think, and they don't like having account managers chase them around going, have you written that copy line yet? Have you done this? Have you done that? We've got a review in 5 minutes. So actually they've really loved it. One thing I do think has suffered, and that they would agree with, is briefing and reviews. So because you don't get that kind of organic conversation that just happens, we were actually talking about how to manage creative reviews, because on this forum where we're all a virtual head, it's even more easy for the very vocal people to kind of jump in and speak over people, and that means that some of the more introverted members of staff or some of the more junior members of staff have really great perspectives, don't get their voices heard. So but if you were in a room, you would notice more that person hadn't said anything, and as my job as a senior person, that's for me to kind of draw that out of them and ask their opinion. And also you don't kind of get the back and forth quite as much of like, oh, have you thought about this? Oh yeah, and you can just kind of draw something up. We've tried using kind of collaborative workspaces like Miro to do that, and they have helped in some way. So say for a pitch, creators can start posting their initial ideas up there, and then you can use post-its, and if somebody doesn't feel comfortable talking in a review, they can put their ideas up there. But then it's difficult because stuff gets missed, not everybody's using it. So I think some of those collaborative techniques we should take forward, because I know in reviews actually people host reviews in different ways where they physically use post-it so people can be more anonymous and voting on the ideas they want, and when they've taken work to clients, sometimes we use that kind of method so that they feel more comfortable voting on the ideas as opposed to saying what they like and don't like in front of an audience. So I think, you know, that it's helped foster some different ways of working, but you do miss out. I don't think we'll ever go back to a 5 days a week model. I know some agencies are mandating that because they think that's how it works. And we were talking about this really strange kind of two-tier industry that might emerge, because you've got some people offering fully remote working forever, and then you've got others saying, no, we're all back in the office 5 days a week, and that's how creativity works. And there's everything in the middle. So I just don't know. Everybody's in such a kind of transient phase, and it will be interesting to see what kind of working model attracts the best talent and makes the best work. It's all a bit of an experiment at the moment.
Yeah, everything's up in the air in that regard. And I'm someone who needs an office. I need to put myself in a different place other than my home, because I don't want to associate work with home, especially when I was working for an agency. So I'd always advocate to go into the office. Going into the office every day, however, that's a different story. So maybe there will be a perfect point in the middle where you go, okay, complete flexibility, just pick which days you want to come in that week, we'll whack on a rota, job done. But I think there are some, like, for especially when big project kickoffs and things, physical meetups have worked. Like, I feel like they still need to happen, I feel like, but that's just from how our team's been working, because our team has been working well being together in an office, because I think everyone's in this honeymoon period of, we get to go back outside again. And obviously as time progresses, they might want more freedom, things just flow around, but we'll see how that changes. But I love the integration of Miro and things. I think Miro has literally just done a deal with Google Workspace. You know, you can do it directly from a call, so that should be quite seamless if you're using Google Meets. So that's interesting. But yeah, the interesting part you said about how creative teams manage and kind of getting junior members involved, that's something that I've always kind of been had at the forefront of my mind, obviously from working in account management and just making sure people get their voices heard and everything. And with the virtual model, I've essentially been in the office with like a whiteboard or a virtual whiteboard, and I've just gone, I'm standing in front of it and everyone else in the call is looking at me, and I'm just doing a roll call, and I'm writing everyone's idea down forcefully, just going, right, this is forced family fun time, I will hear everyone's ideas, get them up on the board. So, but now I'm thinking, is that a bit too forceful? Should I have tried the post-it note thing? So I might steal that. That was a good one. But another thing we'd love to talk about is to dive into what you mentioned at the start of the podcast, which was the gender differences in advertising and creative teams as well. The floor is yours. I'd love to know more because it's really, really interesting.
Well, I suppose this kind of piqued my interest because I'd worked in advertising for like ever, and I probably worked with about 3 female creative teams. I had 1 female creative director in that time, and I was like, where are all these people? So because I had 1 foot in education at the same time, I started looking at statistics there, because it was odd. I was teaching on advertising courses and there were plenty of women there, and even on the kind of creative MAs that were being offered as well. So they were specifically training. So I noticed that there was this dropout. So 60% of the students that study creative advertising are women, but I can't remember what the exact stats is, but it's around 30%. I should be up on my latest IPA status census, but around 30% of people working in creative departments are women, and that's kind of similar at the junior levels as well. So it's not that I know a lot of people have looked at the dropout further on in a career, so as women progress in creative departments and drop out due to things like motherhood, burnout, all those kind of elements, but actually there's fewer women to start off with, so you're starting from a smaller pool and then you're trying to retain a smaller pool. So I thought I would look at that problem. So what can you do to address that, and why are these women dropping out? And just found a variety of things. So the kind of gender bias starts as early on as within the teaching. So obviously, you know, a lot of lecturers in creative advertising are actually creative directors. Because of the generation that they're from, they're typically men. A lot of them, and the people they bring in to do guest lecturing, are usually the kind of quite old-fashioned, I've found. creative director male stereotype of very kind of macho,
Hawaiian shirt, quite possibly,
but just their style of leadership is quite relentless. It's like, it's all about the work, and it's all about working all hours. There's no compromise. It's very competitive. It's very individualistic. It's very it's aggressive in some ways, their style, and kind of my way or the highway. That's not actually the reality I found this year or last year when I was repeating the research in creative departments these days. But because a lot of these people are kind of retired creative directors from many years ago, that's what they're like, and that's what it was, their experience was like. So that's what they communicate. So, and I think more work can be done in education to join a more diverse set of people working in creative departments and who are working in creative departments now, and also connecting with people who are at the more junior levels. So usually it's like the creative director you get in or whatnot, but actually it's useful for students to get more junior teams to hear about their experience. And then you kind of hear about on placements. So a lot of creators can be doing placements for up to a year, 2 years, to get into anywhere, very lowly paid or unpaid placements. And then that's the experience. So you fall out of the statistics then. So you can be going, it depends what agency you're going into. I met women who are junior creators who went into brilliant agencies that fostered diversity. They had, I'm not saying that you need a female creative director to foster diversity, not at all. Like, there was some brilliant members of different styles. But then others went into very much more traditional ones where they might have been the only female team, and they were referred to as the girls, or let's see what the girls have to say about this, and almost kind of trivialized in a way. So that was kind of their experience, with things like maybe they were excluded from nights out and just the banter and things like that. I think a lot of the very macho overt behavior, like I heard stories of one lady was a lesbian, and she had pictures of like nude women pinned up on her desk and things like that, and people saying, oh, you like that, don't you, kind of thing. That's quite a long time ago now, luckily. But people being invited along to strip clubs, obviously feeling very uncomfortable about that, but I think there's more kind of covert behavior, really, just things like, oh, well, we're all going to play football tonight, you're not invited, or because you don't want to go, really. Or there was a lot of it was about the banter and about the chat. So if there's kind of a male creative director, a male team felt very much more comfortable going in there and like shooting the shit with them, and then that's where a lot of that collaboration and ideas come out. Whereas a female team might go in there and it would be very kind of transactional and focused on the work. They wouldn't have that kind of, oh, what happened in the footy last night type banter. And that's what they struggled with. So it actually, the female teams often struggled to get permanent roles and things because they didn't have that more informal social side with the team. Just lots of kind of barriers, really. And then my research kind of looked at how to tackle those, and what we can do in education and in industry to tackle them.
Yeah, absolutely, because I've seen it firsthand on multiple sides of the coin. So I've been in places where the entire management team above me has always been female, and I've been in places where there's still the classic lad banner kicking around, and there you do see like they're almost like microaggressions that kind of come out in very subtle ways, to be like saying darling or sweetheart, but in like a way that's kind of feels condescending. You're like, that just feels icky. Don't do that. It's 2021. So yeah, I see it spill over all the time. And I recently bought a book called The Better Allies Approach to Hiring, just to focus on diversity, inclusion, and everything like that. And it does touch on some really, really great things. But one of which is kind of, it's in the hiring phase at least, actively going out and finding people that are diverse but also fit in your culture. Because from the hiring I've done, applicants are normally very heavily skewed towards white male all the time. And I'm like, where is everyone that why aren't we getting more diverse people applying? And there's a lot of things that actually are very subtle within the job application that can actually put a female or more diverse applicants. And one, you have to go out and try and find them anyway, because it's always going to be skewed, because we live in England, right? It's just going to be diversity is not as easily accessible as it may look sometimes. So there's that, but also little things within the job description. So not having such harsh requirements at first glance, because apparently they did some studies, and I haven't actually got the backup paperwork for this, but I will find it. Apparently this is saying that essentially female job applicants, well, evaluate every single detail within the job application and go, how much of this do I actually match? And if even one or two of them are missing, they won't apply. Whereas 90% of guys will just go in for a penny and just keep giving it a go every time. And this is how it happens. So I found that really interesting, because this is what I was talking to my other half about, and she was just like, I want to make sure I'm completely fully qualified, so my chances of converting are higher. I just think it through more. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you have to write the job descriptions in a way that foster that, then actively go out and try and find them, and then create an environment that also that kind of fosters that as well. And I think that's why I'm so hot on social in regards to having conversations like this way out in the open, and just going, I want people to feel like they know me and us before they ever apply or anything like that, because that's a very important silent analytic that no one's really going to see. It's just how approachable is this environment and culture. And we do little things like everyone's long-term goals outside of work. So let's say James, for instance, behind the camera, he wants to be in freelance film one day. Tian, one of our full-timers, wants to be working social media in London 3-4 years time. My sister Amy wants to work in Marvel Comics, and she works with us as well. So they're all out there on the board, because the thing we hate the most is having to lie and just say that we want to work somewhere until the day we die, because sometimes it's just not the case. You want to diversify, you want to do different things, which is why it's amazing that Mcann and other agencies have let you diversify and do lots of other things. So yeah, trying to foster a culture like that to be more welcoming and actually do that can be difficult, and I'm trying to build things the right way. So from that study then, are there any takeaways that would help us in our growth from the studies you've seen?
I think, yeah, be mindful of the difference in confidence, and also be mindful as well that a lot of women coming out of education are the majority on all their courses. And then when they go into the workplace, they're the minority. So that's often a bit of a shock for them. I think in terms of takeouts, be mindful of that confidence. Be mindful that actually from day one, a female employee or even a placement student might need more support, because women tend to opt for more formalized training, but on things like the softer skills, so kind of presenting themselves, assertion in meetings and that kind of thing, how to sell their work. A lot of what the women struggled with wasn't the work itself, it was how to sell their work and sell themselves. So I think and women welcome kind of formalized training in that helps build their confidence. And what other things would I suggest? Actually kind of creating mentors for them that they feel comfortable speaking to. So this was mainly in larger organizations, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a woman, but it might be somebody who's had similar experiences to them or has recent experience of kind of starting their way out in the industry. So they've got someone to kind of talk to, because a lot of these women kind of kept the things that they were experiencing silent and then just chose to opt out themselves. Whereas, if they had a sounding board to go, this happened to me today, is that okay? Like, is that normal? Someone that they felt very comfortable with from day one. I think that's also really, really important. Someone who's confident themselves and can escalate any issues.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I'm glad you said some of those, because I feel like we're already on the right track to being a better environment, because we do a lot of formalized training. So we do like account management stuff specifically, and full inductions and everything. Because I had a feeling that it might be the way to go anyway, just from an organizational point of view as a young business. But yeah, I'm glad that is actually a point of contact. And the reason that we're actually based, or one of the big reasons we're based in Barclays Eagle Labs, is because they do offer mentorship programs. So the fact that obviously young businesses can't normally offer that, but they have a wide selection of businesses and people that have been there, done that. Some amazing female mentors, one of which is I talk to on a regular basis as well. So having them paired up and having someone to talk to is really, really important. So I completely agree. Absolutely love that, and I'm glad I'm not messing things up. That's brilliant.
I think the whole thing about talking to people authentically about their life is also important, because what surprised me when I came along to teach, students didn't ask me questions about how to do planning. They asked me like, so how many hours do you work then? And how much do you get paid? And what's it like? And how do you do this? And, what's your agency like? What do you, all the kind of really nitty gritty day-to-day questions about like, what do you do for lunch and stuff? And actually that's kind of a closed book. We don't talk about that kind of thing because we want to appear professional. And people do want to know about that in order for them to consider whether this is the career for them, and how that they might manage their kind of longer term ambitions or personal life and professional life. So I think it's good for people to talk about their actual real life authentic experiences and their stuff outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to happen. That's why we try and keep everything out in the open over here, just to make sure that like there's no secrets. Like if you need flexibility, go for it. That we all know what everyone's long-term goals are. You're not going to have to feel guilty randomly when you get close to that goal and then like, oh my God, like I'm going to have to leave now. Like amazing, a round of applause and sail the ship on the way out. It's brilliant. But that's quite interesting. And around the agency life, I think before you graduate, there's like a lot of like mysticism around agency life because it sounds amazing. It's like, oh, hashtag agency life. I'm going to be going out for beers every day. And it can be like that, especially if you're in an agency in London, which I actually got to experience, which was really nice. But what would you think are some of the key differences between agency life in London and outside of London? Because I think that's an important like factor for people to align that it's a very different lifestyle, and depending on who you are, you might want a different thing. So as much as I did enjoy being in an agency in London, I'm not sure I could have done it for longer than I did. Like it's just like it's too much. There's no, especially because I was commuting from Southampton to London, which is just not a good idea. But on top of that, it was just there's a lot of camaraderie there, and there's a weird factor of guilt when you're not involved in every single activity that actually happens, and you feel like you're missing out on stuff. So there's like a whole social dynamic to consider outside of your normal work day, which I find quite interesting. But have you seen any key differences from your career?
I suppose, it's interesting because I came to Bristol at a different stage in my life, but definitely in London, it was good for me because I went there, I moved there. I didn't really know many people. I had a couple of friends from uni there. So making friends and socializing through work was brilliant for me because that meant that I had a lot of friends. And actually, it seemed like an extension of university life for a long time.
Nice.
And while you're relatively junior, you can get away with it for a bit before you become too client facing and things like that, and you actually get responsibilities. So I enjoyed it. I can see that it's really intense. I mean, London's even more expensive than it was then now. So it's very much kind of, you've got to weigh up the pros and cons. I can see why a lot of people opt out of London. I think maybe it depends on your mindset. I always find it very odd, people who want to work in this industry but never want to get that experience. I don't just mean in London. I mean, it could be any place where there's really great agencies with really great people working in them. So it could be Amsterdam, it could be Sydney, it could be, you can choose where you want to go. But the thing that I benefited most from in London was working with amazing people, and people who really taught me how to do my job, and watching them and how they performed, and also working on a very diverse set of clients. I think the difference with working outside of London is obviously the opportunities that you get are more limited. The people that are there have had more limited experience. And you might not be working across such a broad range of channels, such a broad range of clients and sectors and things like that. There's a lot more kind of specialists outside of London. It's changing, I think, with COVID, there's a lot more remote working offers and 2 days a week type offers, so you can kind of dip your toe in. And also some of the cities have got really good agencies building up in them, and a lot of the really good staff that you can learn from are kind of building themselves up there. So I'd say places like Manchester, Leeds, Bristol as well is kind of growing. It's hard. I mean, it's a vocation, it's not a job. I think that's actually what a lot of the younger generation struggle with coming into advertising, because when I started, it was your life. That was what you did, and for all the old people like me, you're still reading campaign, and that's your life. Like, I read books about planning. Whereas actually, I don't think that motivates a lot of people from subsequent generations. Like you said, they've got their longer term goals. They've got other things on their side. Actually, a lot of them are very much more settled down than I was at their age. And have long-term partners and want to do things like buy houses. It's a very different kind of culture. So, or they have other things they're interested in, like they've got their own blog or whatever. So I can see why not being part of that, where it's all consuming. That all-consuming lifestyle can be unattractive actually now, because I think that was the lifestyle that I did lead probably for a good 10 years when I was in London.
Yeah, because when you're in it, you're in it, right? It's like that's everything that I want to do, and I think a lot of people, especially Gen Z, especially in Gen Z talent, mission-led businesses and authentic businesses are what they really want to rally behind, because it has to be a deeper level of meaning. I think younger and millennial fall into this as well. So the bigger the agency or the bigger the company, normally there's a ew kind of thing there, because they feel like they're going to become a corporate cog. But actually, amazing agencies like Mcann, Karmarama, and everyone else like that, they have this really nice upbeat feeling to them, and it's all via design. But it also depends on what their side hustles are, because in today's day and age, obviously, I'm the biggest advocate for that. It's like you can make money in so many different ways that you don't have to go and kind of dedicate your life to a company. And it's completely optional, because sometimes it's just let's thrive within an amazing structure, or let's give it a go and make one for ourselves. And it is all down to individual preference. Like you said, there's plenty of people with long-term partners settling down, and there's lots of different hotbeds of agencies and different businesses popping up. Brighton's another amazing one apparently for agency life. So there's just so many different nuances to it. But yeah, that's what a lot of people don't know coming out of uni. So any fresh grads on marketing and advertising, it's a whole thing. You get ready to dedicate, and hopefully you're passionate about it, because if you're not, then you're stuck. But if you are, you'll love a life, and that's the key. So as much work experience as humanly possible is not it's not for your CV, it's for you. It's to really figure out what you like, because otherwise you'll do what I did and make the wrong choice off the bat, which is go client side, which I didn't like. So that is a whole bunch of potholes you can fall into, but it's very, very, very important to look at.
Yeah, I think it's the same with any kind of creative industry, really. It's never going to really be 9 to 5. Not if you want to do it
really well.
Not if you really want to do it and do it well. And that's not because, you're expected to be in the office long hours. It's because it is so interesting. You can't stop thinking about it, actually, and you don't turn off. And actually, you want to go to things that are related to work outside. So, you have to think about whether that's the type of person that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was the same. I was like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be the absolute best at it, because I just have the world's biggest chip on my shoulder. But you can be just like, no, I have hobbies. I have a life outside of this. I just want to go do my job and come home and do my hobbies. And then that I actually kind of envy that, to be honest. It'd make life a lot easier if I thought like that. But yes, that is 100% a thing. So it's so interesting though. Especially when it comes to if I wonder if I went back to when I graduated, would I do it differently? Probably not now, considering where we are. But it's just it's very, very interesting dynamic. But another interesting dynamic I wanted to talk about is the art of planning and strategy post-COVID. Now, I think a lot of people, especially if they're more in the marketing world or SME style marketing world, aren't really familiar with how traditional planning goes and strategy. Is there a basic format for how you evaluate a business first off, and any methods you actually employ? Because I think research is a bit of a lost art these days. A lot of it goes on gut feeling and whatever's trending, especially in the social sphere. So yeah, are there any traditional principles?
Well, I think research is coming back into fashion, I'd say. I think the reason why it fell out of fashion is because of pressure. And I would say that actually talking to the people at the APG, that's increased since COVID. So, a lot of us strategists have just felt like we are strategy, like PowerPoint and brief writing machines that are just churning out strategy. And if you're doing stuff that quickly without thinking about it, what your only sources are the ones that your agency subscribes to, like Mintel or something, and Google. So, you're looking at stuff, you're not away from the screen. It's so important for planners to get away from the fucking screen. And that's what I think is being missed out on by not going into the office, because every day you get to go on public transport or walk or wherever you go, you get to go to, McDonald's at lunchtime.
People watch.
You see everyone, you see people. That's really healthy. Socializing is really healthy. And I don't think you can really do this job without being really nosy and being like, oh, look at them, and that's really interesting, because you get so much from that, and you're like a little magpie kind of picking things up everywhere, and you miss out on that. So yeah, as I was coming back to, so yes, I think a lot of planners now coming into it might think that they just like sit at desk research tools all the time, but actually what is happening is COVID's kind of forced new ways of doing research, and actually that makes it a bit more affordable. So we've done a lot more online communities, which is, you know, in essence your depth interview or your focus groups online, but actually you can get, because you do them over a period of days, you can get a lot more kind of stimulus from people. They can submit photos and do little tasks for you. And another thing that I've been talking to a lot of clients about lately is communities, building an online panel. So they kind of want to have this panel of people that they can replenish with different, you know, once they get a bit too familiar with the brand or whatnot, of people that they can actually do quite quick research with and run ideas past, and that can input, you know, they can trial new products for them, they can feedback on marketing ideas, they can tell them exploratory insights about what they did at the weekend or that kind of thing. And that type of research is really being helped by online communication tools like this, or different forums. So I think research is coming back around. It's just for us to know the newer techniques and the ways in which to foster that with clients and to sell those into clients and actually meet their need. When there's a need for insight, identify what it is and say, okay, you might not have to do this massively expensive quantitative study, or you might not have to do this massively expensive 26 focus groups. There are different ways that you could do it and get different inputs.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, in the social sphere, like I often recommend to build on, like, depending on what brand you are, building an online community anyway can be a vital part of not only just kind of having an audience there to entertain themselves and actually build that connection there, but also it's a continuous source of qualitative and quantitative data depending on what's going on. So often these days, depending on the brand, I go, don't bother investing in email marketing. I want you to have a private Discord, WhatsApp, or any of the other apps that actually fit. Because one, the open rate's going to be like 50% more than an email, and you'll be able to set up different things, especially on the Discord side. Like we have one of our clients is an app that teaches people how to sing. So the first of its kind, is backed by Cambridge researchers and everything like that, and it's trying to take the prestige out of teaching people to sing, because paying for singing lessons is quite a posh thing depending on where you are. So it was one of those things where that's a really good cause, and we want to rally people around that in general. So instead of just having an email list and updating them on things here, there and everywhere, let's set up a Discord where people can live chat and talk about how they're progressing in their singing, and set up like live jam rooms so people can sing together and actually get feedback constantly, and it becomes a force in itself. And depending on what brand you are, that can fit or it can not fit, but actually you could put together some really wacky things depending on, even if you're a brand that's really, really boring, actually if you did something really off-piste and then create a community around that, be like a filter system. I mean, like take Red Bull for instance, all the crazy stuff they do when it comes to their marketing and things. Like you could create a whole community around extreme sports, even though it's just an energy drink. But the brand advocacy that would build is crazy. And I think brand loyalty is built via social and online communities now, and is still actually really applicable. And still, I think, because a lot of people say brand loyalty is dead, but you can absolutely grab that. And I think it's from that day-to-day communications and things you go out of your way to do as a brand. Super, super interesting. And yeah, I just like how well it's performing, because especially if you have a private Discord and stuff, instead of an email list, it's performing so much higher, at least from what we can see. Anyway, but that's super, super interesting. Love it. And then one of the other things I wanted to talk about as well is, what do you think the ad agency model will be in 10 years' time? What kind of shifts do you think that everyone will have to make? Because obviously we'll have this balance of new tools, we'll have this kind of flexible working. Do you think the model of what's put together now will change in any way? Or do you think it will actually still stay strong, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
It's the thing is, I think the advertising agency model has been in flux for at least the last 20 years.
Yeah,
so,
constantly shifting.
Maybe it was in flux before then. People have very short memories and they think, oh, in the good old days, and when everything was like this and it was like this forever. But I'm sure things are changing all the time. But I think related to that kind of working point and who wants to do what. So there was an article I got sent ages ago, actually. It was by David Goulding. He set up New Commercial Arts, but he set up Adam and Eve as well. He's a planner. And he kind of said that the agency was falling into two polarized types of agencies. So there's one that did content, which I would kind of call churn stuff, and then one which did culture. And he was obviously working at Adam and Eve DDB at the time on John Lewis. So his, a lot of his stuff was this big culture change, big creative idea. And then since digital and social and stuff, down the churn end, you've got so many formats and things that you just need to churn out, and it's basically a headline and an image or a little mini video and stuff like that. And there is creativity in that, but it's not a kind of big culture changing idea that's going to make headlines. All that stuff works really hard. And I think what we've seen is, because there's been a lot of movement of talent in the last few months, and I think that's because you've kind of got 2 years of pent up people not moving. People who want to do that kind of remote working model and do the 9 to 5 are going more to these kind of churn agencies where it is a job and it's transactional, and it doesn't really matter if you kind of get together. It doesn't really matter what the culture is, because you're still kind of doing a little bit of creativity and you're still kind of working on a creative project, but you can just turn it out, and you don't even have to go into an office, and you can work with everybody virtually, and that's fine. And that's kind of good. There's lots of specialist agencies like that, and stuff that you do with content producers or influencers that can all be done completely remotely, because that's how they work. Digital stuff can be. I mean, developers, my husband's a developer, they don't ever want to go back into an office. So, all web building, they go down that end. But the other kind of the culture end, I wonder if that's the type of people who still feel a bit, I suppose it seems old fashioned now about creativity, but they want to collaborate, they want to get together. And I think for me, advertising agencies I feel it's very strange to call myself an advertising agency, because advertising isn't where the interesting stuff is happening. Your opportunity, if you're creative and you think, I'm going to go into advertising, I'm going to make some massive telly ads and all these like a beautiful out of home, your opportunities to do that are few and far between. Like I could probably count on this hand how many like £500,000 TV ads we've made or whatever, in the past year. So sorry, my cat's coming now. But,
special visit, love it.
Yeah, but there are really interesting opportunities outside of that. So one of the most recent pieces of work we did was on an app called GoAbility, which we did with Motability in a collaboration with Google to help people with disabilities that stop them getting around kind of map out where accessible routes and things might be. And if you think more broadly about client marketing problems and products, and another book I was reading by Andy Nairn, his kind of Go Luck Yourself book, was about the forgotten P's. So we think a lot about the promotion, but there's price and there's place and there's products. And that's often where the most exciting ideas are coming from, is when advertising agencies stray into those ideas. So I think you're going to get these more kind of like ideas, creative focused agencies, and then you're going to get the ones who are doing the production, the delivery end of it. And, actually some of the time, you spoke to me about TikTok and things like that. We're doing less of the delivery, that kind of end of it, but coming more up with the bigger ideas, and then specialists will kind of take on those channels. So, and I think people will choose, because that side will be more kind of face-to-face and more kind of collaborative. The other side, you can go and work remotely and do whatever you want flexibly.
I love that, and I love the difference between churn and culture. I think that's really important. And I think just thinking about the space Shogun are in, I think it's almost like a mix between the two, because we like for me, for instance, my job is to help with obviously sales, lead gen, but also top level ideas. So I'm going this, we need to do this, and the cat's here, yay. So, and then work on that, but then also the team then handles the delivery. So, but what I think about social is why we're completely focused on it as a specialism, because there was all the channels in the world to choose from, but I think culture can be shifted via the microtransactions on social, because I think as an individual, like we all know, like brands can be a tad stale on there, especially on their organic channels, because they're too afraid to break out of the business box almost, and the brand guidelines and what needs to be set in stone. And those who are taking the risk to step out of that and just completely go off the rails with it are being rewarded massively with reach, and being rewarded massively by just the general reception of the public. And that culture shift can happen in the microtransactions that you post every day, because that's where people see their legwork. That's where people see that, they've genuinely gone and put out something for me and they haven't asked for anything in return. And that I try and treat organic social like compound interest. So eventually that's just going to like rank up massively in terms of what the conversion rate is, and it's a silent analytic. So if you try and justify that to a high level executive and say, hey, you need to completely change the way you're posting, you need to make a podcast, you need to do influencer content, and you need to keep doing this for the next 5 years, and they go, why would I do that? What's the return on investment? And I go, the return on investment is massive once you put the legwork in, because people see it. I mean, one of my favorite examples is Foot Asylum. Like, most of their marketing is completely just like YouTubers doing cool stuff, and they're being rewarded for it massively by some amazing brand recognition. And I think that is an almost mix between the two of delivery and culture coming together, but your culture spills out in every single micro story you post. So I really like that point. It's really, really cool.
I think that it's hard because there's the easy way and the hard way to getting your sales, right? There's loads of stuff now from the IPA that says if you invest X in marketing, you can expect Y return. It almost doesn't matter. You know, the Byron Sharp stuff always doesn't matter what the bloody creative is. You just put a big logo in there. So, you know, there's the easy way to get your sales. There's, you know, you can invest in kind of traditional advertising. You can spend money on TV, but there's the hard way as well, where a lot of clients, you're like, yeah, I can't tell you exactly what the return on investment is. We're kind of going through this with Yo Valley at the moment. And to do what they want to do, there's the easy way. Yeah, you could do what you did in 2012 and you do a big brand ad, you know, that kind of thing on TV, and get as much exposure for it. Or there's a more difficult way. Maybe you could do something. We don't know if it will get traction. I can't tell you exactly how many sales it's going to generate, but we think actually it might be a better way to go. So it's very risky. And often the agencies themselves have to invest in that, whether that be time or resource, you know, to actually get it kind of sold through. And that's very hard. So in essence, I don't think agencies, they'll be tend towards one or the other. But if you're kind of that bigger cultural agency, you'll still have to do some of the churn because that pays the bills. You know, you still have to do that so that you can fund the time that you're spending to do the more interesting stuff, because that stuff never, from our perspective, from an agency's perspective, really pays for itself. You know, it's stuff you do and you put your spare time towards it. I was reading about the team who came up with Lego Braille in TBWA in somewhere in South America. Amazing. And even Lego didn't want that idea at first. They were working for a site charity. The site charity didn't want it because they were for visually impaired people, not for blind people. So they actually had to kind of make it themselves, chop the Lego bricks up, create prototypes and put it online, and then Lego became interested. But that's the kind of thing that a lot of agencies are having to do to actually get these really more interesting ideas made.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it is stepping out of the box and really pushing forward those newer, better and brighter ideas, because we'll see a massive shift in how media is distributed because of how big data is being pulled back. So with Apple, for instance, making a stand against Facebook, iOS 14 update, your traditional marketing funnel, hello Kat, your traditional marketing funnel is completely thrown into disarray. You can't just do cold campaign, warm, retarget, and that just churns out money, because it used to. Literally, there's a whole reason ClickFunnels exists as a business, right? That's just the whole thing. Just put people in the funnel, remarketing, make infinite money. It was almost like a hack. But literally, you can't do that the same way anymore. And the way that advertising in its purest sense focuses on the creative idea and the planning that goes behind that idea and why it will work is now becoming more important than ever at every single scale. And I always like to say the age of automation is out and the age of authenticity is in. There needs to be some level of connection there, especially going forward with early millennials / Gen Z. They are not gonna fall for it before they can sniff corporateness from a mile away. So it needs to be this balance of serving in every single thing we do, even in top level advertising. So I love how it's all coming together, and it's going to be a constantly shifting landscape, as you said, but all we can do is wait and see what the numbers tell us.
You have to be someone who's very confident with change, very comfortable with change in this industry, and likes to keep up with it, because even if all the channels and things weren't changing, you know, the client's business demands and everything change all the time. You just have to be very confident with, okay, let's just roll with it, I think.
Yeah, Yeah, it is just rolling with the punches through everything, because nothing stays the same for more than 5 minutes, and especially with on social anyway, with platforms constantly competing with each other. I think in the next 5 years or even sooner, you'll see the rise of live shopping. So that's going to be a massive thing on TikTok, on YouTube, because YouTube are already gearing up for it. So we'll see that as a new channel to buy in. You'll see Instagram pouring much more money into creators, because they're opening up creator funds now, because no one's creating stuff on Instagram because it's hard to grow on Instagram. So everyone's leaving and joining TikTok and actually getting more followers from TikTok over to their Instagram rather than anything else. So people are using it as a funnel because they're actually getting organic traffic. So this is why Reels now exists, and they'll keep constantly competing like this. Facebook is just over in the corner being a douche as usual, because just pay to play platform now, which I hate, but they'll soon have to change.
I will say that this reflects your views and not the views of Mcann World Group.
Yes. It's only the views of Shogun Digital only. But yeah, I don't like them personally, because they have obviously not made an effort, but that's a whole podcast in itself about my rant on Facebook. But yeah, it constantly changing space, and we'll all have to adapt, and that's why knowing your research and planning is extremely important. And obviously cats are there to help out in every single way.
Working from home.
Oh, but that's just one of the perks of the job. I now miss my dog now because I've seen the cat. But yeah, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation, and thank you so much for making the time. I really, really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to talk about, promote, plug, you name it, the floor is yours?
I don't really have anything to plug. You can read my article, The Lost Girls, in Advertising and Society Quarterly. That's about it. And if any of you fancy working in Bristol at any point in time, get in touch. It's a very nice city.
It is.
And I just want to say well done for you for kind of starting all this up, starting your own agency. It's really lovely for me to see people that I've taught having good success and loving what they do. So that's very rewarding for me.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and all fueled on by just that one presentation I did way back when. So there you go.
I wish that were true, but
honestly, I will send you the presentation. I still have it. I have it saved somewhere. I can't remember what I called the agency Future Proof. That's what it was. And I had there's a whole thing. Anyway, we'll talk after. But ladies and gents, that's the end of episode 8, if I remember that correctly. If you need anything from us, just let us know. I'll put all the details in the description. Thank you again for making the time. This will be on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you happen to find it. It'll be there somehow. And yeah, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments, because that can be really important. And what do you want to see next? That's my concern. I've always got tons of guests lined up, but what do you want to hear from people? Is it the changes in social platforms? Is it the way of the world of podcasts? Is it maybe even something completely off-piste that isn't to do with business? That's what Authenticity is all about. We just chat about random crap for about an hour. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you very much.